The morning mist hung thick between the crystal trees of Kepler 442c. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stepped carefully through the alien forest, his boots crunching on the purple leaves that carpeted the ground. Behind him, the human research station grew smaller, until it disappeared completely behind the towering trees. Tae-ho had been on this moon for 6 months now. Every day he ventured into the forest to study the strange plants that grew here. The trees were unlike anything on Earth. Their trunks were transparent like glass, and their leaves glowed with a soft purple light. When the wind blew through them, they made sounds like distant music. High above in the canopy, something moved. A shadow passed between the branches, silent as smoke. 6 legs gripped the crystal bark with perfect balance. The creature was massive, easily 3 times the size of an earth tiger. Its fur was deep black with stripes that glowed blue in the dim forest light. The humans at the research station had named it the forest cat, though they had never seen it up close. The forest cat's real name was Zephyros, but no human knew this. For weeks now, Zephyros had been watching the humans. Other creatures on this moon feared the tall bipeds with their strange tools and loud voices. But Zephyros was curious. These beings walked alone through his territory without showing fear. They did not run when they heard his roar in the distance. They did not scatter, like prey animals when they caught his scent. This particular human was especially interesting. Tae-ho came deeper into the forest than the others. He would sit perfectly still for hours, watching tiny insects crawl on flowers. He collected samples of everything: plants, soil, even drops of morning dew. Sometimes he would talk to himself, in his strange language, making notes on his recording device. Zephyros crept closer, moving branch by branch through the canopy. His kind were apex predators built for hunting. His muscles were like steel cables under his thick fur. His claws could slice through the crystal trees like paper. His teeth could crush the bones of any creature on this moon. Yet something about this small human made him hesitate. Down below, Tae-ho knelt beside a cluster of silver flowers. These were exactly what he had been looking for. The flowers only bloomed after the morning mist, and they produced spores that might have medical properties. Dr. Park Mira back at the station had warned him about coming so deep into the forest alone. She had shown him the claw marks on trees near the outer perimeter. She had played recordings of roars that echoed through the night. But Tae-ho was not easily frightened. As a child in Seoul, he had dreamed of exploring alien worlds. Now that dream was real. He was not going to waste it hiding in the safety of the research station. His equipment scanner beeped softly. The readings were perfect. These spores could help treat infections that had been plaguing the colonists on nearby worlds. Tae-ho carefully collected samples, sealing each one in a sterile container. The work was delicate and required complete focus. Zephyros watched every movement. The human's hands were steady and precise. There was no wasted motion. Even when a branch snapped somewhere in the forest, the human did not jump or look around in panic. He simply paused, listened, then returned to his work. This behavior puzzled Zephyros greatly. Every other species he knew would show signs of fear in this deep part of the forest. Their heart rates would increase. They would release stress chemicals that he could smell from great distances. They would constantly check their surroundings for threats. But this human was different. His scent carried no fear. His movements remained calm and controlled. It was as if he trusted completely in his ability to handle whatever dangers might come. Tae-ho finished collecting his samples and checked his equipment. Everything was working perfectly. The weather scanner showed clear skies for the next several hours. He had enough battery power for the return journey. His communication link with the research station showed 5 full bars of signal strength. He decided to venture a little deeper. There were reports of a rare fungus that grew only in the darkest parts of the forest. If he could find samples, it would complete his research project ahead of schedule. Above him, Zephyros felt a strange emotion. Among his people, such determination was respected. Young Vorthak proved themselves by taking risks, by pushing beyond safe boundaries. But his people did this in groups with others to watch for danger. This human walked alone into the heart of predator territory, with nothing but simple tools and unshakable confidence. The forest grew darker as Taeho walked deeper. The crystal trees here were ancient, their trunks so thick that 20 humans, holding hands, could not circle them. The purple leaves formed a canopy so dense that little light reached the ground. Strange sounds echoed from all directions. Clicking insects, bird-like calls, and the distant howls of creatures that hunted in packs. Taeho turned on his helmet light and continued forward. His scanner detected the fungus somewhere ahead. The readings were weak but consistent. He estimated another kilometer of hiking through increasingly difficult terrain. Zephyros followed silently above. No human had ever come this deep into his territory. This was where his people raised their young, where they buried their dead, where they gathered during the storm seasons. Yet the human walked forward without hesitation. The sky began to change. What had been clear blue was now turning gray. Taeho checked his weather scanner and frowned. The readings were different now. A storm system was moving in from the west, much faster than predicted. The equipment showed heavy rain and dangerous electrical activity approaching within the hour. Taeho looked around. He was now too far from the research station to return before the storm hit. The sensible thing would be to find shelter and wait it out. But the fungus readings were stronger now. He was very close to his target. Zephyros could smell the approaching storm. His people had an instinct for weather changes. This would not be an ordinary rain shower. The storms on this moon could last for days and bring winds strong enough to uproot the great crystal trees. The human should turn back. Any creature with survival instincts would seek shelter immediately. But Taeho pressed forward, his determination stronger than his caution. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The first drops of rain began to fall. The storm hit with savage fury. Rain crashed down through the crystal canopy like falling stones. Lightning split the sky with blinding white light, followed by thunder that shook the ancient trees. The wind howled through the forest, bending even the massive trunks until they groaned and cracked. Taeho pressed himself against the base of a great crystal tree, trying to shield his equipment from the driving rain. His weather scanner had completely failed, its screen showing only static. The storm was far worse than anything the orbital satellites had predicted. He tried his communication device, pressing the emergency beacon. Nothing. The electromagnetic interference from the lightning was blocking all signals. The research station might as well have been on another planet. Zephyros crouched on a thick branch high above, his fur soaked, but his grip secure. He had weathered many such storms. His people knew how to find shelter, how to wait out the worst weather. But the human below was in serious danger. The tree Taeho was sheltering against suddenly exploded in a shower of crystal fragments. Lightning had struck it directly, splitting the trunk down the middle. The human threw himself sideways, rolling away from the falling debris. A massive piece of crystal trunk crashed down exactly where he had been standing. Taeho scrambled to his feet, blood running from cuts on his arms and face. His helmet light was cracked but still working. Half of his equipment was destroyed, scattered across the forest floor. He gathered what he could salvage and looked around desperately for better shelter. Through the rain and darkness, he spotted what looked like a cave entrance in a rocky outcrop. He ran toward it, slipping on the wet ground. Behind him, another tree exploded as lightning found its target. The cave was deeper than it appeared from outside. Taeho stumbled into the darkness, his cracked helmet light casting strange shadows on the stone walls. The sound of the storm became muffled, almost distant. He was safe from the lightning, but now he faced a new problem. The cave floor sloped downward sharply. In the poor light and his rush to escape the storm, Taeho could not see how steep the slope was. He took a step forward and felt the ground crumble beneath his feet. He fell. The cave was not a cave at all, but the mouth of a deep ravine. Taeho tumbled down the rocky slope, bouncing off stone ledges and jagged outcrops. His helmet light went out completely. In the total darkness, he could not tell which way was up or down. He only knew he was falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. When he finally hit the bottom, the impact drove all the air from his lungs. Pain shot through his left leg like fire. He tried to move and immediately knew something was very wrong. His leg was broken, badly. He could feel bone grinding against bone when he tried to shift position. Taeho lay still for several minutes, fighting waves of nausea and pain. The storm still raged above, but down in the ravine, the sound was muted. Rain fell in steady streams from the rim far overhead. He was trapped at the least 40 meters down with a broken leg and no working communication equipment. He forced himself to think clearly. Panic would kill him faster than his injuries. He had basic medical supplies in his pack. If the pack had survived the fall, he might be able to treat his wounds and signal for rescue. It took him nearly an hour to find his pack in the darkness. He had to crawl across the rocky floor of the ravine, dragging his broken leg behind him. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through his body. But he did not cry out. He did not waste energy on useless sounds. Zephyros had followed the human's fall from above. The great predator moved carefully down the steep ravine wall, his claws finding purchase on the smallest ledges. His night vision was perfect. He could see the human clearly, struggling to reach his pack. Any other creature would be screaming in pain by now. Most would have given up, accepting death as inevitable. But this human kept moving, kept fighting. Even with an injury that would kill most beings, he was trying to save himself. Zephyros had never seen anything like it. The human found his pack and pulled out a small medical kit. By feel alone, he began treating his wounds. He cleaned the cuts on his face and arms. He fashioned a splint for his broken leg using pieces of his shattered equipment. The work was agonizing, but his hands never shook. His breathing remained, steady and controlled. When the medical work was done, Taeho tried his emergency beacon again. Still nothing. The ravine walls were blocking any signal that might get through the storm interference. He was completely cut off from help. At the research station, Dr. Park Mira was coordinating search efforts. The storm had knocked out most of their long-range sensors. Dr. Lee Junsik had volunteered to lead a ground search team, but the weather made it impossible to send anyone outside. She stared at the blank screen where Taeho's tracking signal should have been. The last reading had placed him deep in the forest, far beyond the safe perimeter. Now there was nothing. No signal, no response to communication attempts, no sign that he was even alive. Back in the ravine, Taeho had used the last of his medical supplies. His leg was stabilized but still useless. He could not climb the steep walls, even if he had been uninjured. The only way out was to wait for rescue, but rescue required someone to know where he was. He activated his helmet light's emergency strobe function. It would drain the battery quickly, but it was his only hope of attracting attention. The bright flashes illuminated the ravine walls in brief, stark moments. Zephyros watched from a ledge halfway up the ravine wall. The human was making light signals, trying to call for help. But the storm would last for days, and by then it would be too late. The human would die of exposure or infection before anyone found him. The great predator faced a choice that went against every instinct he possessed. His kind did not help prey. They hunted, they killed, they survived. Weakness was eliminated, not preserved. But this human had shown no weakness. Even broken and trapped, he fought to live. He did not beg, or plead, or surrender to his fate. He continued to struggle, to hope, to act. Zephyros made his decision. He would help the human survive. Zephyros climbed down into the ravine as the storm began to weaken above. His massive form moved with surprising grace over the rocky terrain. Each step was calculated, silent despite his great size. This was the closest he had ever been to a human. Taeho heard the soft scrape of claws on stone and turned his helmet light toward the sound. The beam caught glowing blue stripes moving through the darkness. His heart hammered as he realized what was approaching. The forest cat. The apex predator that his team had been tracking for months. He should have been terrified. Every survival instinct should have been screaming at him to run. But running was impossible with his broken leg. Instead, Taeho did something that surprised even himself. He turned off his helmet light and lay very still. If the creature wanted to kill him, fighting would be useless. Better to save his energy and see what happened. Perhaps it was only curious. Perhaps it would lose interest and leave him alone. Zephyros approached slowly. The human's scent carried pain and blood, but not fear. Even now, face to face with certain death, this strange being remained calm. The predator had never encountered such behavior in any prey species. He lowered his great head to examine the human more closely. Tejo felt warm breath on his face. He could see the creature's eyes reflecting his helmet light, intelligent and alert. This was no mindless beast. There was something almost thoughtful in that alien gaze. Tejo spoke quietly, his voice steady, despite the situation. "Hello there. I suppose you have come to see what all the noise was about." He had no idea if the creature could understand human speech, but talking helped him stay calm. Zephyros tilted his head at the sounds. The human's voice carried no aggression, no attempt to frighten or threaten. It was almost conversational, as if they were meeting at a social gathering rather than at the bottom of a death trap. The great predator made his decision. He moved closer and carefully slid his head under the human's body. Tejo gasped in surprise as he found himself being lifted onto the creature's broad back. The fur was thick and warm, providing cushioning for his injured body. "What are you doing?" Tejo whispered, hardly believing what was happening. The forest cat was not attacking him. It was helping him. Zephyros began the difficult climb out of the ravine. His powerful legs found purchase on ledges barely wide enough for his paws. The extra weight made every movement a struggle, but he pushed upward with grim determination. The journey took over an hour. Several times, loose rocks gave way under his weight, forcing him to find new routes up the steep walls. Tejo held on as best he could, trying not to shift position and unbalance his unlikely rescuer. When they finally reached the top, both human and alien were exhausted. The storm had moved on, leaving the forest dripping and eerily quiet. Zephyros paused to rest, his sides heaving from the effort of the climb. Tejo looked around, trying to get his bearings. They were still deep in the forest, far from the research station. With his broken leg, it would take days to reach safety, even if he could walk. But now he was not alone. Zephyros began moving through the forest with his passenger. The route he chose was not the most direct path to the human settlement. Instead, he picked the safest way, avoiding areas where other predators might be hunting. The journey would take longer, but it would be safer for both of them. As they traveled, Tejo began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. This creature, this apex predator, was carrying him to safety. It was going without food, without rest, without following its natural hunting patterns, all to help a member of a completely different species. Dr. Cha Hyejin at the research station was monitoring the long-range sensors when she noticed something strange. The storm had cleared enough for the equipment to function again, and she was picking up two biosignatures moving together through the deep forest. One signature was clearly human. The other was much larger, unlike anything in their database of local wildlife. The two signals were moving in perfect synchronization, as if they were somehow connected. She called Dr. Park Mira to look at the readings. "This does not make sense," Hyejin said, pointing at the screen. "The large signature is definitely organic, but it is moving in a straight line toward our position. Predators do not move like that." Mira studied the data carefully. Could it be carrying the smaller signature? Could something be bringing Tejo home? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was right there on their screens. Something large was indeed carrying something human-sized through the forest, heading directly for the research station. Meanwhile, Zephyros was discovering that helping someone else was far more difficult than he had expected. His people were built for short bursts of intense activity, followed by long periods of rest. Carrying the human for hours without stopping was pushing his body beyond its normal limits. His muscles ached from the constant strain. His paws were sore from walking on unfamiliar terrain while bearing extra weight. Hunger gnawed at his belly, but stopping to hunt would delay their journey and put the injured human at risk. As night fell, Tejo noticed that his rescuer was struggling. The creature's breathing was labored and its steps were becoming less steady. The human realized that the forest cat was making enormous sacrifices to help him. "You need to rest," Tejo said softly. "We both need to rest." As if understanding his words, Zephyros found a sheltered spot among some fallen trees and carefully lowered himself to the ground. Tejo slid off the creature's back and leaned against a tree trunk. The alien predator lay down beside him, close enough to share body heat but not so close as to make the human uncomfortable. His glowing stripes pulsed softly in the darkness, creating a gentle light that pushed back the shadows. Tejo looked at his unlikely companion and felt a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. "I do not know why you are helping me, but thank you." Zephyros did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. The human was expressing gratitude, acknowledging the sacrifice being made on his behalf. It was a recognition that meant more to the great predator than the human could possibly know. As they rested in the quiet forest, both beings began to understand that something important was happening. A bridge was being built between their species, one act of courage and compassion at a time. But the journey was far from over, and the greatest challenges still lay ahead. The second day of their journey began before dawn. Zephyros had barely slept, his predator instincts keeping him alert for any threats in the darkness. Every sound in the forest made him lift his head. Every scent carried on the wind demanded investigation. Tejo had noticed his rescuer's restlessness throughout the night. The great creature was pushing itself beyond its natural limits, and it was starting to show. When Zephyros rose to continue their journey, his movements were slower, less fluid than before. "You are exhausted," Tejo said as he carefully climbed onto the creature's back. "Maybe we should rest longer." But Zephyros was determined to keep moving. He could sense that the human's condition was worsening. The leg injury was healing poorly, and infection was beginning to set in. Time was running out. The terrain grew more difficult as they traveled deeper into the forest. Ancient landslides had created fields of loose rock that shifted dangerously under the extra weight. Steep ravines forced them to take long detours. Thick undergrowth tangled around Zephyros's legs, making each step a struggle. By midday, the great predator was stumbling. His powerful legs shook with exhaustion. He had not eaten in over 30 hours, and his body was consuming its own muscle tissue for energy. The glowing stripes on his fur were dim, barely visible in the daylight. At the research station, the search team was finally able to venture into the forest. Dr. Lee Jun-sik led a group of 6 people, following the biosignature readings that Dr. Cha Hyejin was tracking from the communications center. "The signals are moving toward us," Hyejin reported over the radio. "But they are moving very slowly now. Whatever is out there, it is struggling." Dr. Park Mira joined the search team, bringing additional medical supplies. If Tejo was alive, he would likely need immediate treatment. The reading suggested he had been injured in the storm. Back in the forest, Zephyros reached a frozen stream that blocked their path. The water was too deep to wade through, and the current was too strong to risk crossing. He would have to find a way around, adding hours to their journey. As he searched for a safe crossing point, his legs finally gave out. The great predator collapsed beside the stream, his sides heaving with exhaustion. He had pushed his body as far as it would go. Tejo slid off his rescuer's back and crawled to the water's edge. He splashed the cold liquid on his face and filled his water bottle. When he turned back, he saw that Zephyros had not moved. The creature's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and rapid. For the first time since this incredible journey began, Tejo felt real fear. Not fear for himself, but fear for the magnificent being who had risked everything to save him. Forest Cat was dying of exhaustion, and it was his fault. He crawled back to where Zephyros lay and placed his hand on the creature's massive head. The fur was dry and hot to the touch. "Rest now," he said softly. "I will keep watch." Using his remaining stimulant injections, Tejo forced himself to stay alert through the afternoon and into the evening. His broken leg throbbed with constant pain, but he ignored it. He positioned himself where he could see in all directions, watching for any threats that might approach while his rescuer slept. As darkness fell, he heard sounds moving through the forest. Not the usual night sounds of insects and small creatures, but something bigger, something hunting. A pack of smaller predators had picked up their scent. These creatures were built like wolves but moved with the fluid grace of cats. Their eyes, glowed red in the darkness, and their howls echoed through the trees. There were at least 6 of them circling the stream where Zephyros lay exhausted. They could smell weakness, smell injury. In the natural order of things, this should have been an easy kill. Tejo reached into his pack and pulled out his emergency flare gun. He had only 3 flares left and no guarantee that they would frighten the predators away. But he had to try. The pack leader approached first, its lips pulled back to show rows of sharp teeth. It was testing their defenses, looking for the best angle of attack. Tejo fired his first flare directly at the creature. The bright red flame struck the ground just in front of the predator, exploding in a shower of sparks and smoke. The creature leaped backward, howling in surprise and pain. The rest of the pack scattered, but they did not go far. They had learned that the strange bipedal creature could create fire, but they also knew that he was injured and limited in his movements. Zephyros stirred at the sound of the flare. His eyes opened and he immediately understood the situation. The pack predators were natural enemies of his kind, but in his weakened state, he was vulnerable to their attacks. He tried to stand, but his legs would not support his weight. The exhaustion was too great. He could only lift his head and growl a warning at the circling predators. The pack leader was smart. It had seen the flare and understood that the human had limited ammunition. It began to stalk closer, staying just out of range of another fire attack. Tejo fired his second flare, this one creating a wall of flame between them and the pack. The predators backed away, but they did not flee. They were hungry, and they were patient. "I am sorry, my friend," Tejo said to Zephyros. "I should have let you rest sooner. This is my fault." The great predator looked at him with those intelligent eyes. Even in his weakened state, there was no blame in that gaze, only determination to protect the human who had protected him. As the 3rd hour of the night passed, the pack began to close in again. They had learned that the fire was temporary, that the humans' weapons were limited. Soon they would attack in force. Tejo raised his final flare, knowing that this was their last chance. But before he could fire it, he heard new sounds in the forest, voices calling out in human language, lights moving between the trees. The search team had found them. Dr. Lee Jun-sik burst through the undergrowth first, his powerful flashlight cutting through the darkness. Behind him came Dr. Park Mi-ra and the rest of the search team, their weapons drawn and ready. The pack predators took one look at the group of armed humans and melted back into the forest. They were hunters, not fighters. They would find easier prey elsewhere. "Tejo," Mi-ra called out, running to where he sat beside the stream. "We found you. Are you injured?" "I am alive," Tejo replied, his voice weak with relief. "But my friend here needs help. He saved my life." The search team stared in amazement at the massive predator lying beside the stream. This was the forest cat they had been studying from a distance for months. Up close, it was even more magnificent than they had imagined. Dr. Kang Min-ho, the team's veterinarian, approached carefully. "It is exhausted," he said after a quick examination. "Severely dehydrated and malnourished. How long has it been carrying you?" 2 days, Tejo answered. 2 days without food or proper rest. It saved me from the ravine and has been carrying me toward the station ever since. The search team worked quickly to provide emergency care for both human and alien. They set up a shelter beside the stream and prepared to spend the night. Moving either patient in their current condition would be dangerous. As Dr. Nam So-young treated Tejo's injuries, he told them the full story of his rescue. The team listened in amazement as he described how the forest cat had climbed down into the ravine, carried him to safety, and protected him from the pack predators. "This changes everything we thought we knew about these creatures," Dr. Oh Sung-min said quietly. "They are not just predators, they are capable of compassion, of self-sacrifice for another species." Zephyros drifted in and out of consciousness as the humans worked to save his life. Through his exhaustion, he could sense their care and concern. These beings were like the one he had rescued, willing to help even a potential enemy. Perhaps there was hope for understanding between their species after all. 3 days later, both Tejo and Zephyros were strong enough to complete the journey to the research station. The great predator had recovered much of his strength with proper food and rest. though he remained cautious around the larger group of humans. Dr. Park Mira had convinced the team to bring Zephyros to the station for further treatment. "He saved one of our own," she argued. "We owe him the best care we can provide." The journey took most of the day, with frequent stops to rest. Zephyros walked beside the human stretcher, staying close to Tejo as if unwilling to let his rescued friend out of sight. The other humans gave him plenty of space, respecting his wild nature while marveling at his intelligence. When they reached the research station, the entire staff came out to witness the unprecedented sight. Never before had one of the forest cats come so close to human habitation. The creature was massive, beautiful, and clearly capable of both great violence and great compassion. Dr. Cha Hye-jin had prepared a secure but comfortable area for Zephyros near the medical facility. It was not a cage but rather an open space where he could come and go as he pleased. No one wanted to imprison the being who had shown such kindness to their colleague. Tejo insisted on being treated in the same area, despite offers of more comfortable quarters. "We have been through this together," he said. "I am not going to abandon him now." Over the following days, an extraordinary relationship developed between the research team and their unusual guest. Zephyros showed no aggression toward any of the humans. Instead, he seemed genuinely curious about their activities and technology. Dr. Kang Minho made detailed observations of the creature's behavior. "His intelligence is remarkable," he reported to the team. "He understands cause and effect, shows planning ability, and demonstrates emotional responses that go far beyond simple survival instincts." The breakthrough came when Tejo was well enough to move around on crutches. He approached Zephyros slowly, carrying a small gift, a sample of the rare fungus he had been seeking when the storm struck. The creature examined the offering carefully, then made a sound that was almost like purring. "I think he understands that this is what I was looking for," Tejo explained to the watching scientists. "He knows that completing my research was important to me." Zephyros did understand. In his own way, he had learned about human determination and curiosity during their journey together. These beings risked their lives not for territory or food, but for knowledge. It was a concept that fascinated him. Word of the rescue spread to other human settlements throughout the sector. The story of the forest cat who carried an injured human for 3 days became legend. Scientists requested permission to study Zephyros, but the research team was protective of their guest. "He is not a specimen," Dr. Lee Jun-sik declared firmly. "He is a friend who saved one of our own. We will not treat him like a laboratory animal." Instead, they established new protocols for interaction with the forest cats. The creatures were to be considered intelligent beings, deserving of respect and protection. Hunting them was forbidden. Disturbing their territory required special permits. 2 weeks after his rescue, Tejo was cleared for light duty. His first task was to establish a communication system with Zephyros. Using simple symbols and sounds, they began to build a basic vocabulary. The breakthrough came when Zephyros drew a symbol in the dirt with his claw. It was a rough circle with radiating lines, clearly meant to represent the sun. When Tejo drew the same symbol and said sun in human language, the creature repeated the sound as best he could with his alien vocal cords. "He wants to learn our language," Tejo announced excitedly. "He is actively trying to communicate with us." The implications were staggering. If the forest cats were capable of learning human language, true communication between the species might be possible. Trade, cooperation, even friendship could develop. But Zephyros had his own agenda. Through patient effort, he managed to communicate that he wanted to teach his people about humans. The rescue had shown him that these strange bipedal beings possessed qualities that his species respected: courage, determination, and loyalty to their packmates. One morning, Tejo woke to find that Zephyros was gone. The creature had left, during the night returning to the deep forest. But he had left something behind, a small crystal formation that glowed with soft blue light. It was beautiful and clearly meant as a gift. "He has gone home," Dr. Nam So-young observed. "But I do not think this is goodbye." She was right. Over the following weeks, the research team noticed changes in the behavior of forest cats throughout the region. Instead of avoiding human activity, they began to observe from a distance. Occasionally, one would approach close enough to leave a small gift, an unusual flower, an interesting rock, or a piece of crystal. Tejo established a routine of leaving gifts at the edge of the forest each day. Sometimes food, sometimes tools, sometimes just interesting objects from the human world. The offerings were always taken, and something was usually left in return. 3 months after the rescue, Zephyros returned to the research station. But this time, he was not alone. 2 smaller forest cats accompanied him, young adults who stayed close to his side and watched the humans with obvious curiosity. He is teaching them, Tejo realized. He is showing them that humans can be trusted, that we are not enemies. The younger forest cats were less comfortable around humans than Zephyros, but they showed none of the fear that other predators displayed. They had been taught that these strange beings were worthy of respect. Dr. Oh Sung-min documented everything carefully. "This is the beginning of something extraordinary," she wrote in her reports. First contact with a truly intelligent alien species, initiated not by technology or force, but by simple acts of courage and compassion. The research station became a meeting place between the species. Humans and forest cats maintained a respectful distance, but communication continued to develop. Basic trade began, humans offering manufactured goods in exchange for rare materials that the forest cats could gather from deep in the forest. Tejo often sat at the forest edge in the evenings, sharing stories with Zephyros about human civilization. He told of cities that reached toward the stars, of ships that sailed between worlds, of the endless human drive to explore and understand the universe. In return, Zephyros shared what he could about his people. They were ancient, he conveyed through their growing vocabulary of symbols and sounds. They had watched the stars for thousands of years, waiting for the day when other intelligent beings would come to their world. That day had finally arrived, and it had come not with conquest or conflict, but with mutual respect and understanding. As Tejo looked up at the stars one evening, Zephyros beside him and the lights of the research station warm behind them, he realized that something profound had happened. 2 species, separated by millions of years of evolution, had found common ground in the simple recognition that intelligence and compassion were not limited to any single form of life. The forest cat had watched from afar, then carried an injured human to safety. In doing so, he had carried both species toward a future of cooperation and friendship among the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but perhaps the greatest wonder of all was the discovery that kindness and courage could bridge any gap, no matter how wide or strange it might seem.